And what about maternity and paternity leave?
Maternity and paternity should both be paid the same. Uh, if I don't necessarily know the statistics, but I would think that the female might need a little bit more compensation, if anything, because they have to go through all of the necessary stages of taking care of their child to make sure that they live a healthy life, and they should have that opportunity.
I think that both are like totally applicable. I think it takes two to tango and make a baby, so why doesn't it take two to raise a child? So it's like kind of like if you're going to give maternity leave, give paternity leave. I think that they're both needed. I think it's obviously maybe a little more important for like biological reasons for maternity leave because they need to like breastfeed if they choose to go down that path, and that's the only like difference I can see between the two. Really, like they're not different in my opinion.
I think that maternity leave is definitely, I would say, more important than paternity leave. As a mother, when she's pregnant with a child, I think that that's a very important stage in her life that she shouldn't be working, and then even a little bit after that, she should have the opportunity to be there for her child right from an early age, where for paternity leave, unless it's in a male-male relationship, I think that maternity leave is enough for the child. And that.
Huh, that's interesting. Well, obviously with maternity leave, it's crucial and vital because the women obviously have the babies and stuff. I think with maternity leave, I think it should be a thing, just because I think the emotional support during that time would be very crucial as well. Then again, I think it just all depends on the situation, just because it could be during a time when there might need to be financial need, and I don't think most companies would be okay with not like paying someone when they're not there, especially when they're just trying to do emotional support.
Yeah, the fact that like people on maternity and paternity leave like get barely any compensation or anything like that, but then there's a societal expectation for people to have children and that kind of thing. I think that's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, I think maternity leave is like a human right.
I mean, I think that when you have a kid, both parents should be there to raise it, and you need that time to take it off, and it shouldn't be holding you back from making money as well. And it also shouldn't just be the mother too. The father plays a big role.
It's really kind of ridiculous how quickly fathers have to leave sooner, but then also mothers have to leave really quickly, have to leave their kids at home in order to work and provide for their well-being.
It's a bigger issue here in America than a lot of places. Just because, like, even we don't give as much maternity leave, much less paternity leave. And we are such a business-driven, work-oriented society. Again, you can see it in like how we have less vacation time, we have a lot of other things. So there's so much of a weird American mindset that's really tied up in maternity and paternity leave.
I think they're super necessary, and I think it's ridiculous that like it's looked down upon, I guess. Like, I think there should be a paid maternity leave, because if you are saying like, oh, like you have those people that are like, oh, it's like a woman's job to like be a mom and like stay at home, then like give them that opportunity. But even besides that, like I don't agree that a woman's body is just used to procreate. I feel like having a child is something that like needs to be nurtured and cared for, and a family shouldn't have to choose between like, oh, should I like go to work or take care of like my kid. Like that familial bond, especially when they're first born, I think is something that's very important. And I think like moms should have paid maternity leave, and fathers especially should have paid maternity leave, because like just because you're not the one that physically gave birth, like that's still your kid, and you still like need to be there and help the mother. And I think if you had an option like paid maternity leave, you would have like more men I guess, present like in their child's like early days.
So maybe someone doesn't necessarily have to go on paternity leave, but I think it should definitely be an option.
And then it should apply equally, because I mean, like, what if you're like gay and you set up an adoption before like the child is born? Like, you still need to take care of that child when they're an infant. So, again, identity shouldn't play into it. Like, basically, like parental leave should be a universal thing, I think.
Yeah, I just think it's so ridiculous that that's not happening yet. Like, I was talking actually to a woman who works at a nonprofit in Denver. She works for World Denver, and she said they hosted a delegation of women from the Middle East. And of course there are like a flurry of thoughts about women's rights in the Middle East that probably come up whenever you hear about that, but she said they started to talk about paid maternity leave, and she was lectured by Saudi Arabian women who normally we would write off as like oppressed or whatever, like they don't have women's rights. They were so mad that the US doesn't have maternity leave, and I think that's just like a perfect example of how we're just so miserably failing.
And what are your thoughts about reproductive rights for women, including abortion and birth control?
I think you need to have that option. It's your choice. It's your life.
I think with birth control, I think women have the right to choose in their own way. Obviously, like that, it's in a sense their own body. When it comes to another human life, where a male is involved, I think that's a little bit different.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I am Christian, but I'm always more on the side of, I think it should definitely be a choice that's up to the woman. It's not something necessarily that I think should be everyone's first choice. I think there's a lot of other options out there, but I also think that it should not be a government decision.
I may not necessarily support birth control or abortion, but I think that topic should be up to the individual case, the individual female, to make that decision.
My outlook on abortion is that it shouldn't be a thing.
I feel like it's not my place to say, so I mean, I think it's their choice.
I believe I'm very pro-choice, very, very pro-choice, and I believe that every single person should be able to make their own decision on whether or not you want to have an abortion.
Everybody has the right to choose what they want. If they want an abortion, they should be able to get it. If they don't, then they should be able to receive the support necessary to raise the child.
I think that like you have a right to your body, and like I personally think birth control, abortion are all okay as long as like that's your decision. Would I necessarily get an abortion? I don't know. I think like there is life when you consummate like a baby, but I don't think that that's anyone else's decision but your own.
It's very much a woman's choice and not a problem that a man ever has to face, so I don't think it should be a man's decision on what.
I think it's good that people are working really hard to get rid of the stigma surrounding abortion, especially abortion, but also other types of birth control and reproductive control.
Birth control, just in every sense, just makes so much sense. I'm in the international studies field, and so we talk about development a lot, and like you just can never undervalue the importance of family planning and the opportunity and the room for contraception to make a really positive impact on society.
I think women should have the right to do whatever they want with their body.
They're so important for everybody.
To have like a majority of men in Congress like determining what a woman can and can't do with her body, I think is completely absurd.
Heard the terms pussy, bitch, or douchebag used to insult a male, and do you see anything wrong with these as opposed to another insult?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing, is that like most insults directed at men have to do with making them more feminine.
I never thought of them as like, um, which sounds horrible, but I've never thought of them as like being like demeaning to any specific group.
I recognize that it is using something more directed towards women as a negative insult.
It's like degrading as in like to women, not to the person.
I think pussy's the worst one. I think the kind of like, oh, if you don't do something like play a sport or I don't know, hang out with the bros, like you're a pussy or whatever like that, then yeah, that's problematic and that should not be a thing.
I don't like using bitch because usually people associate bitch with female, and that puts it down. I'm kind of a double standard though, because sometimes I will describe people as a bitch, so that's a problem.
All those terms are implying that the male is less male, almost, if that makes sense.
Like, I definitely have friends of mine who, like, when they use bitch, it's as a very non-gendered term, which sounds silly.
Yes. And unfortunately, I am definitely like one of those people. I think it's just such an instinctive thing for me to do.
Those are also come from female products, feminine products, or from feminine parts.
If I was to use the word bitch or anything like that to refer to a female or a male in that any sense, that's immediately putting it in a lesser stature into thinking like, oh, I'm insulting you, I'm calling you a bitch just because I think that you are more feminine. Like that doesn't make sense at all. I think a lot of people just aren't aware of it. They more so just say it.
And what about slut or whore to insult a woman?
Yeah, that's horrible. Don't ever do that.
Well, usually there's a whole thing about how usually when you're using slut or whore, it's usually for a chick, and I think that's the less educated people that are like throwing those words out, and I think it's to demean women and their options in life and what they're allowed to choose, and like, go be free. Don't call people sluts and whores. Like, let them do what they want.
I think it's different just because, again, it is so gendered and it has such a stigma.
It goes back to how we how we police women's bodies, and that's shitty.
A lot of people are called sluts or whores if they have sex with guys, and you can have sex with guys if you want to have sex with guys. Do what you want to do, and that you shouldn't be labeled with that. Especially again, if you want to wear a revealing shirt, do it. You shouldn't be called a slut, and you shouldn't be brought down for that.
She's not a slut or a whore. She just likes to have sex. Like, who the fuck doesn't?
Probably a lot of dudes' most favorite term to describe a woman, and that's not okay. Because again, it just ties into the whole fact that dudes can have as much sex as they want and be fine and still have good social standing and be a stud or whatever, but girls, if they have sex with like two dudes, then they're a slut.